Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us tonight, very pleased to say, writer and broadcaster Henry Winter and the Sun's Charlie Wyett. Good evening to you both. Let's quickly run through the back pages. Gents, a mail back page, Stones scare. Big story around John Stones. Ten Hag, meanwhile, only has £50 million in transfer kitty. At times, back page has England put 6 stones in isolation. Ten Hag wants a swift purchases, and Aussies risk ban if they rig group. That's at the World T20. The Sun back page, Charlie forewarned us of this. They ink it's all over. Ivan Toney threatening a tattoo if England win. Ten Hag contract hardball, the other main story there. Guardian has life after Southgate, and taking Wilcock's advice in cup final key to Ten Hag staying. Front page of Telegraph Sports Supplement, Stones in isolation as sickness bug hits camp. Ten Hag to get 2 more years in a new United deal. Star has sickened Stones, and Trent is no middleman. Trent Alexander-Arnold in midfield. Next in Lion, the Mirror headline regarding England. Gareth Southgate pictured Rue. Trent Alexander should be nowhere near the midfield. That's from Wayne Rooney, being Rue. And Erik faces a role new United fight. So that's around transfers, we believe. We'll discuss that in due course. OK, gents, let's start with the Mail. Come to you, Henry. Stones scare. How scared should we be about this, do you feel?
Well, it depends on the severity of his illness. You have to feel for John Stones. He had the ankle injury the other day. He didn't play that much, probably in a couple of hours at the tail end of Manchester City's season. He's such an important player for England, as he is for City. Just that experience, the 72 caps, the leadership that he brings, the sort of the pace, the composure, the ability to step into midfield. So that would be alarming. I mean, England do have alternatives, but not of Stones' calibre. I mean, Lewis Dunk has been talking pretty sort of bullishly. I'm not here for a holiday. Obviously, Ezri Konsa's had a fantastic season. He could play to the right of Gahey. But a penny for the thoughts of Jarrad Branthwaite, who had a good season for Everton and is sitting at home or hopefully on holiday somewhere.
Does it look like a bit of an admission, Charlie? This Times headline, England put 6 stones in isolation. Do they look a little bit exposed in that back line?
Yeah, I think they are, regardless of John Stones' sort of sickness worry. I mean, you know, as Henry said, he's not had a great season. He's only played 12 Premier League starts. And, you know, England will miss Harry Maguire. And I know lots of England fans felt that wouldn't be the case, but they definitely miss Maguire. And it'd be a disaster if Stones wasn't around. And I think Henry probably agrees with me. We've spoken about this out here in Germany, that we both feel that Eric Dyer should have been in this squad. You know, when you look at, you know, the lack of experience of the other defenders. But yeah, I think that is a real chink in England's armour at the moment. Not forgetting that they don't have a natural left back at the moment. They're waiting on Luke Shaw. So Kieran Trippier, right-footed. He hasn't had a sort of a great end to the season. And Kyle Walker, actually at right back, brilliant player, but didn't have the best sort of last couple of months either. You know, and add to the fact that they've not got a sort of a natural player to play next to Declan Rice.
You both out there then, Henry, as Charlie says. I think back here, mood seems to have been tempered a little bit by the defensive situation. What's the mood like in camp? What have you observed? Confidence levels?
Pretty positive, but how much can you actually tell from open training sessions? But you look at the quality of the players and you see Bellingham's link up with Trent Alexander-Arnold. You see Foden's class. You see Bukayo Saka coming back into form, and Harry Kane and Declan Rice in there. But the positives are all around the front six. Obviously, England have an outstanding goalkeeper in Jordan Pickford. Just watching him in training today, I mean, he was outstanding. That shot stopping is going to be so important for England. But defence, as Charlie rightly says, is a concern. Ironically, given Southgate, a very good centre half, international centre half himself, that is actually really become England's Achilles heel. Completely agree with Charlie on Harry Maguire, and not simply for his defensive presence. He gives England an attacking option when they're flipping in the corners and free kicks. So he'll be missed. His leadership will be missed, and that is why I'm sure the medics and everyone in the England camp is working hard to get John Stones fit, because he's such an important player for England.
Absolutely. Lots of question marks then in defence as to who lines up. Charlie, in the Mirror, they're focusing on perhaps a little bit uncertainty. You have a central midfield as well. Rooney saying Trent Alexander-Arnold should be nowhere near the midfield. Who do you think will line up in central midfield? How firm do you think Southgate is even in his mind about that one?
Well, I think he's certainly looking at Trent Alexander-Arnold. There's no doubt about that, probably edging towards him. I think he's been frustrated, Southgate, that he's not been able to experiment with Alexander-Arnold, on more occasions because he's missed a few England camps with injury. But to a degree, I understand what Rooney's saying. Now is not the time to be experimenting. We're in Germany. We're a few days away from the first game of the Euros, and we still don't really know who's going to, play next to Declan Rice. And, of course, Conor Gallagher would work hard, and then I know lots of fans would like to see Kobe Mainoo or even Adam Wharton, and I get that, but we are not in an ideal situation at the moment. But it'll be interesting to see if he is given the chance how Alexander-Arnold plays against better opposition, because so far he's been playing against Bosnia, he's been playing against Andorra, and of course stating the obvious, but playing in a major tournament would be very different. Just
reading some of these quotes from Rooney, Henry. Defensively, meaning Trent Alexander-Arnold, he's all over the place. He can't defend. I wouldn't have him anywhere near the middle of the pitch. Seems like Rooney's certainly shooting from the hip. What do you make of the midfield options?
Well, Rooney talking about discipline, I go for the Carlo Ancelotti raised eyebrow, probably two raised eyebrows. I mean, Charlie and I have been there. We've been to going into tournaments where Rooney's been suspended, and we've seen England go out of tournaments with Rooney's discipline levels being questioned. So I think maybe on a tactical level, I think that's harsh. I think that Southgate, everyone's been calling on him to be bold. So let's encourage this Trent Alexander-Arnold plan. He obviously wanted to do it in the March internationals, and then Alexander-Arnold was unfortunately injured. Gave him the chance the other night, thought he was good. If England are going to progress far in this tournament, and they have the players, certainly the attacking players, to do that, they need a quarterback. I know it's a bit of a cliched expression, but Alexander-Arnold has got this fabulous passing range. We didn't use Hoddle properly in the past. England didn't use Scholes properly in the past. Let's not ignore our best passer, England's best passer, which is Trent Alexander-Arnold, and go more on the front foot. Conor Gallagher is a fantastic pressing machine, but this, in the group stages, certainly at the very least, unleashed Alexander-Arnold.
Henry, before I go to Charlie with the story around Ivan Toney in his paper, quickly, how many guaranteed starters are you confident of heading towards Sunday? Do you feel that there's, uncertainty, and is that exciting in a way around this England lineup?
I don't think it's particularly exciting. I think you'd rather have sort of 11 outstanding players that you knew were going in there. I think 5 of the front 6 are pretty clear. It's just a question of who plays alongside Declan Rice. I would prefer it to be Trent Alexander-Arnold. Obviously, Kyle Walker. I know there've been 1 or 2 issues about his form, but he's such an important player. You saw how he's played sort of Vinicius and Mbappe at times. He's a terrific player. So yes, and Jordan Pickford. But I would say probably 7 out of 11 definites.
OK, fantastic. Let's get to Charlie's paper, The Sun, then. Sun, you gave us a warning of this, Charlie. They ink it's all over. Ivan Toney to get a tattoo on his head if England win the Euros. Flesh out the story a little bit for us, if you will. No pun intended. And also, what role will Toney play? Will he still get the tattoo if he doesn't get any minutes?
Well, first of all, we've been at England's, Henry and myself at England's training base today, and then we went onto the media centre in the town of Blankenheim, and it's actually a castle, and quite a remarkable media centre. So we spoke to a few of the players, and those from Radio Talk Sport and 5 Live spoke to Ivan Toney, and he spoke about all his tattoos, but obviously tongue in cheek, he was saying that he's definitely going to get a tattoo if England win the Euros, but he then joked that he might have the trophy tattooed on his forehead. I'm assuming he was joking. But look, it's an interesting story. What a 12 months he's had, from the ban to accusing the FA of hijacking his hopes of the World Cup in 2022. Because he was charged just before then, to getting back to playing, to scoring goals, to having a terrible end of the season, 12 games without a goal, but then just taking his chance or being given that chance by Gareth Southgate with Jack Grealish and Marcus Rashford and James Maddison missing out. Slight, tiny concern over Harry Kane, but I think basically Southgate wanted 3 strikers there. So you'd certainly, well, if it comes to a penalty shootout, you want Ivan Toney there, that's for sure.
Absolutely brilliant at those moments, isn't he? Gents, let's move to the Guardian front page of the sports page for them. Life after Southgate's succession plan in place if head coach quits FA, insists Mark Bullingham. Henry, how do you assess the future around Gareth Southgate? We had those incendiary, explosive comments come out of Bill, didn't we? Do you feel, though, that Southgate is destined to stay on as long as it's a decent showing? What's your read on both his intentions and the FA?
Eddie, that's the key question. What is a decent showing? And we talked to Mark Bullingham about this, and he was slightly reticent to get withdrawn on sort of headlines about Southgate's future, which he's then been drawn on headlines which create, in a way, more interest in Southgate's future. I just think that what he talked very interestingly about is the fact that the FA have a contingency plan, and clearly they should. I think any sensible organisation has contingency plans for its leading employee, but the minimum for for me, I admire Southgate. He's changed the culture. He's done so much for England. He's taken the fear out of the shirt. But in those key decisive moments against Croatia in 2018, against Italy in 2020, he didn't make the changes as quickly as he could have done. So the progression, the direction of travel has been absolutely outstanding. But the direction of travel here, out in Germany, with their quick autobahns, has to be Berlin or bust. If he doesn't win his 4th tournament with this collection of attacking players, regardless of, the FA clearly wants him to stay on, regardless if it's a gallant failure against France in the semi-finals, I think he has to go. But the FA are scared of him going because they look around and they don't see too many potential successes, certainly not homegrown ones.
Henry, the personnel issues that we've raised not mitigating, you feel, in Southgate's defence? I mean, if he had Rio Ferdinand and Sol Campbell back there, perhaps you could argue he should win it. Do you think that is something the FA will take into account if they don't win the Euros?
Well, all countries could say that, all managers could say that, and very rarely do international managers, certainly of the so-called elite countries, and England consider themselves an elite country. The FIFA ranking would suggest that the coach wouldn't have lasted so long.
OK, let's get to the Mirror back page, Charlie. Next in line is the headline we read before. What do you make of the uncertainty around England? Is it causing any problems at all with Southgate's position?
No, I don't think so. I think, most crucially of all, the players, they're just focused on the games, on the training sessions. Players, they want to play for the country, but, they're thinking of themselves. They want to do their best, certainly do their best for the team as well. So I don't think they're not thinking about Gareth Southgate's future. And maybe you could argue that Southgate's sort of delivered a couple of gambles that maybe he wouldn't have done a few years ago. But equally, I think he knows he's got to win the Euros if he's to remain. I still think he'll probably leave at some stage this year. His contract's later in the year, not directly after the tournament, and I think we will be looking at another manager. But as Henry's rightly said, there's not too many obvious candidates out there, which is why the FA are desperate for him to stay. Indeed.
Well, Southgate's been mentioned with Manchester United, hasn't he? We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about them and more of the back pages, including this in the inside pages of the Metro. Ten Hag not sacked, and now wants to be backed in the transfer market. More on that in a few moments. You are watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to you. And it's welcome back to Henry Winter and Charlie Wyett. Charlie, I come to you and your paper again. We've discussed Ivan Toney's tattoo plans, but on the sidebar there, Ten Hag contract hardball by Neil Custis. Tell us more about this, because it, I guess, implies a power swing at Old Trafford that Ten Hag is going to be quite demanding now, and it apparently isn't going to cede control over transfers.
No, I think he feels he's in a strong position, both in terms of, his position on transfers, but also the contract and the wages, command in terms of getting an increase in his salary, potentially. Because I think he realises, other than the decision that's been made, he knows that the fans are with him. And, I think Manchester United fans deserve a bit of credit because they have stuck with him. And it wasn't a particularly good season until that FA Cup final triumph. But, you've not heard of too much dissent at Old Trafford. And they were with him and they wanted him to stay, certainly the vast majority of them. So that's obviously had a big influence on that decision by the club to stick with him, other than other reasons. And they've obviously spoken to other managers. So Ten Hag's making the most of that. And, he's really going for it. Quite how much longer he will remain next season, I'm not so sure. But at the moment, he's using this situation to his advantage.
Maybe a managerial swap with Gareth Southgate. We won't talk about that just yet. Let's move on, Henry, to the Mirror, but focus on the same subject and get your take on it. Erik faces a role-new United fight. It must have been difficult, I would imagine, to have your job discussed with other managers. But what do you feel about the balance of power? Will Ten Hag play hardball, if you like, to use the American expression now?
Well, hardball. I mean, they've been hard work to watch at times this season, Manchester United. But look, I've got a lot of time for him, and I think Charlie's right. The United fans have been really patient, really supportive. They don't want to be like certain other clubs who have this sort of churn of managers that they feel that they're above that as such a huge club with such a great history. So I'm glad they've backed Ten Hag. But, I mean, playing hardball, I mean, some of that football this season, they finished 8th. They finished with a minus goal difference. I don't think he can just sort of swan around, go into sort of Carrington, sort of demanding things. I don't actually think that's his style anyway. I mean, if you've met him, there's no real sort of ego to him. I think that Mirror headline might be slightly sort of reflecting the fact, is he going to be a head coach or a manager? The push nowadays is towards a head coach and to fit into the system, which I think probably quite works. And in terms of recruitment, it makes sense if everyone's on board. And they're players that he wants, but also that they are players that the recruitment department and Jason Wilcox, people like that, have actually looked into in depth, because some of his buys that he's driven through in the past, or he's wanted in the past, like Anthony, haven't really worked out. And that's been a lot of money that's been spent, and Ratcliffe won't want that repeated. No,
certainly won't. It's interesting you bring up Wilcox, because let's go to The Guardian and discuss him, and Henry also referencing egos there. Was this a sign, Charlie, of humility, or perhaps a lack of, I guess, conviction in his own beliefs? Because this is a story by Jamie Jackson. Taking Wilcox's advice in Cup final was key to Ten Hag's stay. Erik Ten Hag's willingness to accept Jason Wilcox's tactical suggestion that he used Bruno Fernandes as a false nine in Manchester United's FA Cup triumph against Manchester City was a key factor in the Dutchman being retained as manager. It's hard to see Matt Busby or Sir Alex Ferguson taking advice from Wilcox in that scenario. Is it a sign of strength, though, for Ten Hag that he can do that?
I think so, but equally, he wasn't in a great situation. I think he knew, bearing in mind, he spent the previous 2 weeks being asked about the Manchester pack about losing his job. He knew he was in, real danger, regardless of the result, really. So I think it was in his interest to listen to some advice. It's a great story, but equally, I don't think it wouldn't be a case of the first manager who listened to his director of football or someone above. So he was clearly quite sensible, and that that might continue in the summer, particularly with the transfers, but maybe moving forward with the team as well. But again, as Henry said, impressed with Ten Hag, the way he's conducted himself last season. It was incredibly difficult, and I thought he showed real class throughout.
Indeed. Well, on the subject of that, the transfers inside the Metro, Henry, Ten Hag not sacked, now wants to be back, wants 3 transfers. Does that sound about right to improve from 8th position? What's your take on that? That's before pre-season, by the way, in the Metro.
All managers, whether top of the league, wherever they are, they always want 3 more transfers. It's just the way they are. They're like kids at Christmas. They want 3 more toys. But they definitely need strengthening. The most important thing, really, is they need to keep players fit. Whatever the issues are behind it, whether it's something systemic or whether it's just pure happen chance, they have to keep these key players like Lisandro Martinez, like Luke Shaw. They have to keep them fit. Just on the Wilcox story, I mean, Jamie Jackson is incredibly well connected. I completely respect the story. But just looking broadly, managers with respect, particularly one like Ten Hag, who's done a lot at Ajax, who had a good season last season, who also tried out the Bruno Fernandes false nine in a previous game. I don't know how much they listened. They may, listen politely and say, "Oh, that's really good," but I mean, it might make sense to listen to Jason Wilcox because he knows so much about the game as a player and since as a coach and a sort of director of football. But I think the Fernandes thing was mainly driven by Ten Hag, and he saw how it would bring the best out of the players, particularly in that cup final, and it certainly worked.
Absolutely did indeed work. Maybe saved his job. But so he wants transfers, Charlie. But in the Mail, Sammy Mockbell and Mike Keegan report Ten Hag only has £50 million in transfer kitty. If that's true, what can he do with that? Or whoever's recruited them?
I think it's going to be the story of the summer. At the moment, with a lot of clubs, there's not been a lot of movement so far, and I know that's often the case ahead of a major tournament. But with teams, you're being really careful about their financial situations and looking at the trouble that some of the clubs are going to find themselves in. It's really not a surprise that Manchester United, are only going to spend 50 million. They may have to get a couple of players out, maybe a couple of big earners out as well. Who knows? I mean, Harry Maguire said that he's got an extra year of his contract at Old Trafford, and he says, he'll stay there as long as he's wanted. But the key is obviously he did all right under Ten Hag in the second half of the season. But whether he wants the manager wants him to remain at the club, it's going to be interesting. There's some wheeling and dealing to be done. But £50 million doesn't get you an awful lot these days, does it?
Certainly doesn't. Well, not in football anyway. Henry, quick on this. We've joked about this, but Southgate threat to loom over Ten Hag. Back to the Telegraph and Jason Burt. Do you see the England boss being a threat to the United boss over the course of the year?
What, in terms of taking his job?
Yes.
Well, I'm sure that will feature in the headlines, but if you talk to Manchester United fans, they're not particularly wild about the thought of Southgate coming in. And Southgate is at his best working with younger players. And I know Manchester United have got that and they've had that tradition, but I'm not so sure. I think if he does well, the FA will try to convince the nation or convince the sceptics that Southgate should stay on.
Okay.
Because he's got a young squad building for the World Cup.
It has indeed. Henry, Charlie, pleasure to speak to you as well. Keep enjoying it out in Germany. We hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching the programme.